In this Flutter tutorial, we'll be learning about a cloud-based online design tool called Figma. I have created a small design file inside Figma, and we will be using that design file to practice our UI skills. We'll be exploring basic widgets and common widgets such as text, padding, container, images, and more. And lastly, we'll be creating a custom widget. Let's begin. There is a Figma link below in this video description, and if you click on it, it should open up a Figma design file. And this should open up. Let me explain a bit about Figma. So Figma is a place where designers can create application UI, and we can use this design file to create the application accordingly. So on the left side, you can think of it as an Explorer tab where right now it is showing pages. So there are two pages in this file called Widgets and Leafy app. So we don't have to bother with this one because this is for the future videos. And right now, let's just look at the widgets pages. Right over here, you have two screens. One is called the custom widget and one is called screen 1. So firstly, we'll start by creating this screen 1 on the Flutter app. But before that, let me explain how you can navigate through Figma. So to zoom in, what you can do is hold Control and scroll up. And to zoom out, hold Control and scroll out. For scrolling, you just use your mouse's scroll, and to scroll horizontally, hold on to Shift and just scroll through. So that is how you move around in Figma. And the useful part of Figma comes in once you start clicking on the elements here. If you can click on the element here, it will show you exactly where the element is on the left side. And you can look at the padding and the description on the right side here. And if you come to the Inspect tab on the right side, you will see the properties inside this element here. And as you can see, the width is 109 pixel and height is 24. And if you were to click on this and hover over any element, it's going to show you the padding involved. Right now, containers, this text containers, have a padding of 16 top and left side is 24. And if you were to hover below to the below element, it says the padding is 16. And if you were to do this for the square, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to say 24 padding top, and if I hover below to the circle, it says padding is 24. So let's start by opening up the previous Flutter project. So how we can do that is come to VS Code and File, Open Folder. The previous code was called Demo, so let's open the Demo folder. And if we were to look here, we are inside the Demo folder. Okay, let's first go on to the main file. And let's remove this completely. Instead, not really, let's create the key. And let's remove the home widget, which is a scaffold. And go on to lib, and let's create a file called home screen.dart. And let's say it's a home screen which extends state plus widget. So now we have to import some statements, create the missing override and a key. So this home screen will contain a scaffold, so let's return a scaffold. And if we were to give the home parameter this home screen, when we run our app, this should display the home screen. So before we do any coding, let's open up a virtual device, which you can do by clicking here. And I have Pixel 6, so I'll open this one. So firstly, let's look at the design file. And as we can see here, there's a list of widgets here, which is structured in a column manner, because there's a text widget, then there's another widget, and inside that widget there are a couple of other widgets. So all of this, you can see it's placed in a column-like manner. So what we can do is insert a column inside the scaffold's body, and if we look here, if we look in the design file, there is no app bar present, so we'll omit the app bar and see what happens. So inside the scaffold we have a property called body, and inside the body let's create a column, and a column will have basically children, which is a list of widgets. So let's create that property. There's a children here, and if we were to come here, let's just firstly create this widget is called containers. So this is a text, and to create a text inside Flutter, what you do is call the text class, and if you look here, it takes a property called data string, which is a string data type. So we can insert a string called containers, and let's see what happens if we run this. Come here and type flutter run. As you can see, the text is below the status bar. So usually this happens if you don't provide an app bar, and how we can fix this issue is if we were to wrap this column widget with another widget called safe area. You can control dot and wrap with widget, and let's use safe area, and if we were to come to the terminal and press R, it's going to reload, and you can see it's placed below the status bar. So the safe area will make sure anything inside all the children is below the status bar. So as you can see here, we have created a text called containers, and for now let's just look at the properties of this text widget. And as you can see here on the typography section, it says let's just not use fonts for now, and let's just focus on weight, size and line height. As you can see here, the weight is 700 and size is 20. So let's try to fix that, and it will have a property called style, and inside style you can add another property, add a class called text style, and this should have font size, which in our case is 20, and font weight should be font weight.w 700. So if we were to save this and come here and reload, it should be a bit thicker. Let's just omit line height for now as well. This I will be explaining this in future videos. And let's try to fix the issue here, which is the padding. And if you can see here, it's padded on the left side by 24 and on the top side by 16. So let's do that. If you want to add padding, what you can do is wrap this text widget with paddings. So if you come here and click control dot, if not, right click this and go to, if I'm not wrong, refactor, yeah, and wrap with widget. There's a widget called padding which will give padding to the child. So padding will have a property called padding, so let's give it that padding, and this takes a data type of edge insets dot. There's many ways to put it. If you you can just give only for now, and let's just give left side was 24 and top is 16. Let's just give left side is 24 and top 16. If we were to save this and run, and we have the padding here. So after the padding, what we have is, after the text widget, we have this gray colored box, and inside this we have 3 widgets. So first let's create this. To do that, we can use a widget called container, and let's give a property called color, and let's just say use the color here. If we were to click here, you can see the color is this hex value. So let's just copy this and come over to our code. And to use hex value or color, you gotta use the color class and paste the value here. Not everything, only the hex value. So in front, you have to add 0xff, and if I were to save this, the color changes. And right now, it's not going to do anything because the container does not have height or width. It needs a child. So if you look here, the child should be another column because these three elements are stacked on top of each other. So let's create these three widgets, which seem to be a container type. And before that, let's just create this padding inside the container, and the padding is 24. So you can give padding to containers as well by giving the property, and it takes edge insets dot. Since both of this is equal, 24 and 24, we can use a property called symmetric, and inside symmetric, we'll give the vertical padding to be 24. Let's just make this const here. And the child should be a column widget, where column will take a bunch of children widget. And if you were to look here, the first widget is a square, second one is a circle, and the third one is a empty square with rounded radius, border radius. So let's create the first one, create another container, and it should have a height of 100 and width of 100. Let's just give it a height 100, width 100, and the color of it should be this value. Copy and come over to the code. If I were to reload this, it's gonna come here. And as you can see, the gray color background is only on the container widget itself. So how we can fix this is we have to specify the container, the gray color container, that the width should take up as the length of the whole screen. And how we can get the screen length of the phone is we can use a property called media query dot of context dot size dot width. So if we were to save and run this, it's going to expand. And you can see here the padding is not really working for containers. I'm sorry, I didn't add the bottom padding for the text here. So let's try to do that as well. Padding, the bottom should be 16 as well. And if we were to run this, reload, yep, it's gonna work. And as you can see, the alignment is not working here. So what we can do is the column which holds the container and this gray color container, let's just align the cross axis. So cross axis means if we are using a column, that is the main axis is the vertical axis, the cross axis is the horizontal axis. So we want to make sure all the elements are aligned to the left side. So what we can do is inside the column, let's just give a property called cross axis alignment dot the start of the cross axis, so which will be the left side. So if we were to run this, it's going to go on the left side. So that is fixed. So let's move on and let's give some const here. Let's move on and create the bottom part of this container here. So the bottom part is another container, but this time it's in the shape of a circle, and the padding between is 24. Container color should be this value here. Let's try to, and to give a shape, what you can do is, for now let's just do this. This will give you an error, but let's see why. So if we want to change the shape of the container, what we can do is insert decoration, and inside the container you have to use a class called box decoration, and there's a shape property inside, and box.shape. There's rectangle and circle. It's rectangle by default, so let's use circle. And if we were to run this, it should not work, because once you give a decoration property, you can't specify the color here. And instead of doing this, let's just copy paste this inside the box decoration, and this should be working now. Yeah, as you can see, this is working right now. And there's an issue here. These two elements should have a padding in between, and let's just try to do this and see what happens. The padding is 24, and if we were to add the padding here, dot only bottom 24, nothing's gonna happen, because the padding refers to the internal padding from the edge of the box. So what this means is, let's just try to create a text inside the box, and let's comment this out. If we were to run this, there's a hello here without padding. And if we were to uncomment this and run this, okay, something is off. So the padding refers to the internal padding, and if we were to give a space between these two objects, what we can use is, we can use another property called margin, which refers to outside, the padding outside of the edge of the box. So let's use edge insets dot only bottom 24, and if we were to run this, the 24 padding is given outside the border of the box if we were to use margin. So that is the difference between padding and margin. Another way to solve this issue is, we can give another container with a height of 24, and if we were to do this, the padding is still gonna remain. And instead of container, we can use another widget called size box, which is similar to a container, but it only has height, width, and a child. So this does not have any decorative properties. So we can do something like this. Lastly, let's create the third element, which is a container with a radius and a border. So let's do that. Let's create another. For now, here let's just use a margin instead of this sized box. Edge insets dot only bottom 24, and let's remove this. The height should be 100. It should be 100 as well. And there's a decoration property, box decoration. And let's look inside. The radius refers to the border radius, or the angle of this the edge of the box, and it is seemed to be 24, and the border is 1 pixel. So firstly, let's create a border. And to create a border, what you can do is, inside the box decoration, there's a property called border dot all. If you were to do this, it's going to create a border and give it a color of, let's see the color, copy it, I were to paste it here, I gotta use a class. And if I were to reload this, let's see what happens. There's a border here, but as we can see, the edge is not rounded. To make sure it's rounded, what we can do is, outside the border, inside box decoration, there's a property called border radius, and border radius dot all. If we were to use this, it's gonna give the radius for all the corners, and the all takes a property called radius of data type radius, and what we can do is use radius dot circular, and let's give it a value of 24. If we were to save this and rerun, the border is rounded. Let's move on to the next widget, which is this section here. And if you look at the properties, this is similar to the text on top, so we can just do some copy and pasting. So let's do that. If we were to come here and copy this, copy and paste it below the container, and rename this to paddings slash what is that one, margins. To reload this, we can see it's come up here. And for the next part, there's a gray color background which is similar to the top one, and the padding is 24 and 24 all around. So what we can do is create another container with the same property, and let's create a container here. Paste the properties, and the children should be if we were to look here, these are aligned in a horizontal manner. So instead of using column, what we can use is a row widget, and inside there's a container with 100 width and height. So let's do that. Instead of using column like just now, we'll use a row, and this is similar to a column such that it has children property, and inside children let's give a container as well with a height of 100, width of 100 as well, and the color should be this color here. Let's copy that and paste it. If we were to refresh this, it's gonna come here. We forgot the padding on the gray color box, which is 24. So let's add that as well. Symmetric, so can use horizontal to be 24. But since these two are same, instead of using symmetric, we can use all and just provide 24. If we rerun, okay, it's given the padding, and there's another container. So let's just copy this, and the color should be a bit different. Click here, color is this one, paste it here, 0xff. Where to run this. So it's a different box, but there's a gap between this box, and we can, as mentioned previously, you can use a margin edge insert dot only. If I'm not wrong, it should be 24. Okay, let's give it a right side padding of 24. If we have to reload this, it's gonna go on the right side. So there should be a text called hello inside with a size of 12 and 400. The color should be white, so let's do that. The child should be a text widget called hello, and we gotta give it a style. So inside style, we need the text style class, and font size should be 12, and the color should be
color. So in hex value, a white color is just 0xff and a 6 more f. But instead of doing that, another way we can give color is by using colors dot white. So this is another way. This is basically pure white, and if we were to run this, there's a hello text here. And if we look at the design, there should be some padding of 14, and let's just give it a padding of, for this container, which is this one, let's give it a padding of hinsets.all 14. To save this and rerun this, the padding appears here. So the basic concept here is padding is inside the container itself, which is defined by the edges, and the margin is outside the container. So we can see padding of 14 is given here, and the margin of only right 24 is given here outside the lines. So that is the difference between padding and margins. Give it const value, and it requires here as well. And before we move on to creating the other widgets, what we can do is to, as you can look here, it's very congested and it will be very difficult to read on if we were to make all the widgets here. So instead of doing this, what we can do is, to make it more readable, we can take these two out. We can look at it like a section. Let's create a builder function. So it will return container section. Let's create a function here, and this section will return a column, and inside the column we'll have these two, the header container and the gray color box. Should be, let's just copy this out and paste it here inside the children of the column. And for now, since we are using this context, we have to pass the context, which is given by the build function here, into the function. So let's create a parameter called context, so this should work. And instead of just writing the code here, what we can do is split it up in smaller segments such that it becomes easier to read. So let's just copy this function, and instead of returning the widgets here, we can call the function, and the parameter is the context. So let's just pass the context here, and if we were to run this, it should work as well. For now, the containers is back to the center, so we gotta make sure the column has a property called cross-axis alignment and to the start. If you were to restart, yeah, it's gonna work. And let's do that for this part as well. Another way you can make this faster is, what you can do is click here and refactor and extract method, and you have to provide the method name. For now is build padding section, and if we were to look here, it has created the method itself, but we have to wrap this with a column because this is not taking into account the box part of the widget, and the return type should be a column since we are returning the column. And let's just copy this inside as well, inside children. Okay, and we need the context here as well, context. So if we were to run this, it should work, and now it's a lot cleaner and it will be easier to read. So let's say if you want to change something inside this section here, padding, inside the padding section, we can just look for this function here, the method, and change stuff over here. So this will be a lot easier to read. So this is one good practice you should always do. Okay, we have split the code apart. Okay, let's move on to creating this section here, alignments. So instead of writing directly here, let's just create a column and build alignment section. Okay, context. This will return a column inside of children, and let's copy this. And use this function inside the column here. Pass the context. To restart, it's gonna come here. So we have to provide cross-axis alignment to the padding section as well. Also to the build padding section. And let's create this part. If we were to look here, all of this is containers with 100 width, and the padding between them is 21 for now. Let's, instead of doing that, let's just build it first. Padding container should have the similar properties. Let's just copy it. Child should be. To create the children, we can either work through using row and the children will be columns, or we can use columns and the children will be row. So let's just do that. We can use either way, it doesn't really matter. So let's use column, and inside the column there should be a row of children, and inside there should be a box with 100 width and height. Inside the children, let's create a container, and the container will have a height of 100, a width of 100 as well, and color should be this value here. We have run into a problem. As you can see, the column widget extends the screen size, and it's saying the bottom is overflowed by 10 pixels here. So to solve this kind of issue, what we can do is make sure that this part is a scrollable part such that we can scroll through. So how we can do that is, there's a widget called single child scroll view, and if we were to add this and restart, it's gonna allow us to scroll through the column. So the child should be a type of column or a row, and if we were to use this, we can make anything scrollable if that widget overflows outside the view. We were at build alignment section, and let's just create 2 more of this and restart. As you can see, the padding is not there, so let's add a size to box as well, and width should be 21, and if we were to restart, you can see the width is 21. And as you can see, this is not flush to the right such that the padding is 24. This issue is because our screen size varies according to individual users' device, and once we design a screen, it is only according to the designer. And as you can see here, the height is 2715, the width is 370 on the design file, but this will vary according to each user's device. So instead of statically typing this kind of width, the spacing between this container, if we were to do this not all device will align properly because the device size varies. So instead of using this padding in the design, we can use something called, we don't have to follow the padding in the design religiously, but you have to come up with your own conclusion or talk with the designer how they want it. But as you can see, to make it look nicer, what we can do is flush this to the right side, and this should be spaced evenly. So that is the intent of the designer. So what we can do is come over here, and instead of giving paddings like this, what we can do is inside the row there's a property called main axis alignment. Main means if it's a row, it's a horizontal alignment, and there's a property called main axis alignment dot space between. So what this does, let's look at it. And as you can see, the boxes are aligned such that everything is spaced in between. So this looks a lot better than what we by giving static paddings. So this looks better, so we'll go with this one. And let's complete the widget by giving these 3 rows as well. We can copy this and replicate it 3 times. And for now we have to give padding horizontally. So what we can do is, let's just use the static height, which is 390. So the box height should be, the gray color box height should be 390. And for column, let's restart this. For the column side, we can make sure it aligns even between, space between, and as you can see, we've created the box here. And each of these should have a child called text, and there's a hi inside. Yep. And the style should be text style. Size of color should be white. Okay, let's copy this for all the others as well. To reload this, it's gonna come out here. So as you can see here, the alignment is different for each of these. So the first part is working as intended. So let's look at the second part. It's aligned on the top side in the middle section. So let's try to fix that. If we were to go here, and how we can do that is wrap this text widget with a widget called align, and we have a property here inside called alignment. So alignment dot top center. If we do this, let's see. Yeah, it's working as intended. So let's do that for all this widget as well. So this, the top row is fixed. So let's move on to the middle row. The height should be, let's wrap it with align, alignment dot align dot center left. Let's see, it's working. Yes. So let's fix for the whole row. And for the bottom section, let's try to fix that using align bottom left As you can see, we fixed the design according to the design file here. Let's move on to creating the typography section. So let's create another method here. And let's not provide the height here. And what happens if we don't provide a height is that the container's height will be sorted according to the size of the child. So we don't have to specify the height here. We had to specify for this section because we have to make sure the padding is according to the design. So therefore we had to provide the size of the container itself. But if we didn't have to, we can just use the padding of the container itself to make sure everything is aligned. For now, let's not give it a height, and let's start creating these two text here. Basically what is going on is you're basically giving it height here, and let's try to create this as well. Inside here there should be a children column, and inside this column there's a row here on the first one. The first one has a size of 12 and height is 14.52. We'll talk about the height here. Height. So how do we provide height is, if we were to look here, the text itself that has a height of only 12 pixels, but the widget, the whole text button has some paddings, and this is defined by the line height, and you can see the line height is 14.52 pixel here. And if we were to give it 14.52, let's see what happens. We have to build a function here such that it will render inside the body. So if we were to restart, as you can see, the height is way too big, and let's remove the height for now. It's somewhat proper, but we have not implemented the height side of the text here. And to use the height, what we can do is the value you provide here is not the raw value which you see here. So how we can get the height is just open up a calculator. The line height divided by size will give you the actual height. 52 divided by 12 equal 1.21. So if we were to give this height instead, 1.21, this should work according to the design. So that is how you use height. Let's do for this one. It's the same thing, but the alignment is different. And let's just see some other alignment as well. If we were to use this center, it's going to center these elements, and space around will space it around such that the sides are also even, and space it evenly. So instead of doing that, let's do space between, since this is what the design is asking. And for this one, it's 14, and we gotta calculate this one as well. 16.94. It's 1.21 again. So I will not be going to make this exactly since the concept is just the height part. Let's just copy this and paste it around such that it looks something like this. And the next part where you can learn something is this part here, the triple dots here. So what this means is, if your text is a bit too long, some screens may be a bit too small and it will overflow. So let's try to do this. Flutter to copy this. There should be a text here. To run this, let's make this a little bit longer. You can do some string multiplication here. So what this does is it's going to multiply this string. To do this, you can see here, let's just give it some padding to make it, let's just cover it in a container, and margin should be only top 24. Let's give it a color white. As you can see in the design, it should be of one line, and anything that goes beyond should be we should give this triple dots. So how we can do that is we can specify inside the text class property that the max lines should be 1. Let's see what happens if we do this. And as you can see here, anything over here is not rendered at all. So instead of doing that, what we can do is text overflow or overflow, and we can give a property of text overflow dot ellipsis. So this is what the triple dot means. If you were to run this, and as you can see here, there's a triple dot here. So that is for overflow. Let's look at this part here. Let's create another container. And let's just give it a value of dark. As you can see here, let's make sure as you can see, the container right here is only the size of the text itself. Let's just give it width of the screen size width. To run this, you can see that the text is encompassed by the container. So we can do something called text align. And if we are to do this at the end, what happens is it's going to go to the right side. So text align will align the text according to what you provide here. There are many other properties like center or justify. So all this you can use to align your text according to your preference. But as you can see here, the text is supposed to be aligned on the right side, so we can do that. So you can do something like give this text alignment property as well. This should work as well, but I'm just showing you the possibility of doing it through the text property here.
Let's look at the layout widget. Let's create the builder function here first. Let's start with the first widget. If we were to look here, it's a long widget with a height of 32 and the width is 342. So instead of using just this raw 342 value, what we can do is make sure the widget is filled all the way inside the paddings, between these 24 paddings. So let's do that. Before that, let's copy the color first and go to the code, and let's create a column. Let's try to rerun. Now we have to call this function from the body. And the bar is shown accordingly. So I have set the width of this container to be the size of the screen, but because there's a padding on the side, it will make sure that the padding is applied to the green color container. So that is why I can use the full width of the screen, and even though I'm using the full width, it should, by right, it should fill both the horizontal axis. But because this widget is inside the padding that we applied somewhere here, it will not go beyond these pads. So you can use the screen width like this. Now let's create the other two containers as well. And we have to use half the screen width. Let's see what happens if we use half. We can do that by dividing this by 2. Okay, let's provide some padding margins as well. And let's align this to the left side, which is cross-axis dot start. As you can see here, this is not completely at the center. Because we are using the whole screen width divided by 2, by right this is working correctly, but we have to take into account that we gave some padding here. So instead of using the width of the screen, we gotta take the width of the screen minus the pads here, which is 24 and 24, so 48 minus 48, and let's cover this in parentheses such that this operation occurs first. So if we were to run this now, it should come straight in the middle. And for the bottom one, we will just divide it by 4 instead, because half of this is divided by 4. So let's do that. And as you can see here, it's working properly. Now let's create the bottom section. So for this, we'll use the whole height of the gray color box. The box is a bit different color than the previous gray. So let's do that. Let's create a box, and we will create a container. The height should be 245. Let's make it a bit even and make it 246, and the color should be and let's see what happens. Okay, let's just provide the width. Let's just give it a width of, it takes up everything in the screen inside the pads. So let's do that. And if you were to reload this, if you look here, the box is here. So we gotta fill this box with the children. So since we have 3 widgets here, we have to use something like a column. We can use row, but let's just use column. And these boxes are 50 by 50, so let's do that as well. Copy the color. And the first box is here. Let's create the second box. And the color should be pink. And the third box has a color of purple. let's see what happens if we just run it like this. As you can see, it's all stacked on top of each other, and the default cross-axis alignment, as you can see here, is cross-axis alignment dot start. So the column will align everything in the middle. So instead of doing that, let's align this vertically first. So for that, we'll use main axis alignment dot space between, such that everything is flush to the side. And for the middle one, we have to align it to left and the bottom one to the right. So what we can do here is align this container using the alignment, wrap it with the widget align, and alignment should be, we can use center left, and for the bottom container we can use center right. And as you can see, it goes to the side, and we can use center here because this axis is pushed down, this box is pushed down by the column itself. So even if we were to use any other thing like top, it is still going to be pushed down by the parent widget, which is the container, the column, sorry. So firstly, let's create the builder function. And the first element is a square with a circle inside, or we can look at stack as a square is below the circle, or the circle is on top of the square container. So let's create the square container first. It's 100 by 100, so let's do that first. And let's call the function here. Oh, we gotta align this to the side, so oh, it should be working. Okay, let's forget about that for now. Okay, so there should be a circular container inside the square called the blue color one. So how we can do that is we can wrap this with a widget called stack, and this stack takes the children, means a bunch of other widgets, and we can provide another widget inside this stack's children. So for that, let's just copy this and paste it here and change the color and the shape. It should be red color and the shape is circle. So let's do that. Decoration and first box shape, and the color should be remove this color here. So let's restart and see what happens. As you can see, the circle is on top of the blue square. So how this works is, if I were to place something below this container here, it is gonna render on top. So if I were to take this and place it above inside the stack's children, what happens is the red color circle is gonna be painted below this blue color circle. So that is how stacks work. So let's try to make some other widget as well, as shown in the Figma design. So we need to push this square by half the width of the square of this circle. So let's try to build this. Let's create another stack and let's give this guy, let's provide some spacing between those two, and height 24. Let's just copy this. And for the bottom one, we have to push the red color circle by half the square's length. So let's try to do that. One way we can do it is providing a margin on the left side by 50. So if we were to do this, as you can see, it's pushed to the right side by 50. So this is how you can do it, but the way I'd like to do it is wrap this stack in a, let's just use a, you can use a size box, but for now let's use container, and the height should be 100, or if not, let's just give it a width only. So since we know that the total width of this widget itself, if we combine it, should be 150 because this is going by 150. So let's create a container with 150, and let's use a decoration called border such that everything is clearer, and let's give it a color border all color off. To make things clearer, we're gonna run this, and as you can see, and even if we were to remove this margin and we have to reload, as you can see, the stack parent is a container, and the stack can move its children around inside this parent container, which is shown by the border here. So the way I'd like to do it is use alignment inside the stack once we have defined the size of the stack. So this is how I'd like to do it. And for the bottom one, what we can do is wrap with align and use the alignment to be center right. And as you can see, it will move to the center, the right side. So I'd like to do this because it gives me more control over the stack. And we can just use a sized box because we don't really need the decoration. That was just for making things clearer. And let's look at the last stack, which is going to the right by 50 and going bottom by 50. So the total size of this box should be 150 by 150. So first let's do that. Let's provide the height as well, 150. And if we were to align it, let's just create the container again. If we were to align it, we are supposed to send the circle all the way to the bottom. Right now it's coming to the center right, so let's send it to the bottom right. So if we were to restart this, okay, I forgot to copy. Let's copy this and duplicate it below, and there should be some margin as well. And let's create that widget here. So we have it here. So we are supposed to send it to the bottom right. So let's do that. And as you can see, it's working as intended. Now let's look at the last section, which is images. So let's create this builder function here. So let's look at the images section. There's a image here, and we have to display this image on our app. So how we can do that is, firstly we have to install this, download this image from the Figma file. So what you can do is click here on the image, and if you were to come over to the right side and click on the plus sign, you can export this image as a PNG or JPG. Let's use PNG and let's export it. So we have this inside now download folder, and let's just we have to create a folder inside our Flutter project. So firstly, let's create a folder called assets, and for now let's just put the assets inside here, or if not, let's just do images, and another folder could be notes. So let's copy whatever we have here, which is our download, into the images folder. Now the image is inside our Flutter project, and we have to specify that we are going to be using stuff from the assets folder. How we can do that is we have to go to the pubspec YAML. If you come down here, there's the assets folder. We have to uncomment this and give the path to the image, like copy relative path and paste it here. So you can do something like this. If not, if you have more images, what you can just do is remove the file name and just give access to the whole directory, and whatever you paste inside, now your Flutter project will be able to get. So let's go to the home page, home screen, and how we can display that image is using image, not this image, asset, and over here you gotta provide the path of the image. So right click, copy relative path, and give a string. It's not this side, it's the other way around. So if we were to run this, I think you gotta add, oh okay, this is the wrong side, you gotta use this slash. Now if you were to run Flutter, run, if you come below, the image should be here. So let's try to align the image on the left side. And it's aligned to the left side. So the image has other properties such as the box fit, which is very useful. Let's say instead of a square place, you have to place the image in, let's remove this container. Let's just give it a height of 100 and a width of 200. Let's give the color to be amber, for example. So if you have to display the image in something like this, and if you were to give this a child of image.asset, or instead, let me just paste it. So what happens if we were to run, place a square image inside this rectangular container? You can see there's some spacing on the backside. So instead of, what you can do is, there's a property inside image.asset called fit, and inside fit you can specify how you want the image to fit. So what you can do is box fit dot fill or fit height. So what this does is, it is already doing exactly what it says. It's fitting the height first, or if not, we can do something like fit width, and if you reload, it's gonna fit the width. Or there's other methods such as box fit dot fill, for example. Let's see what it does. It's gonna fill the entire thing. It's gonna stretch the image, or the one I like to use most is boxfit.cover. So what this does is it basically finds which it ensures that the entire container is covered. So it's not going to stretch the image, but it's going to make sure the entire thing is covered, but it's going to have some cropping issue like this. So before we begin on moving to creating our custom widgets such as this one, let's just look at fonts, the font style as well. So for now, go to Google Fonts and copy a font. Let's pick one called, this is my favorite, Paddings. So I'll download the family and let's see, extract. Okay, I have all this here, and to make sure these are all the fonts files, so for me to use it inside my project, what I need to do is come here inside asset. What I can do is create a new folder called fonts, and inside fonts I can copy this files and paste it inside fonts. Let me place it inside fonts. Okay, now it's inside my project. So now I have to specify that I'm going to be using those fonts inside my Flutter project. Just like we did for image, we got to come to pubspec.yaml, and if you look here, we can uncomment this, and let's remove the bottom one here and give the family a name. It's Paddings, and the asset folder is inside. Let's remove this as well. Let's just give you one example. The assets folder is, let's just use medium for example. Copy relative name. You gotta provide the path to the file, TTF file, so paste it here. Okay, I didn't copy that. So we have to specify that we have to give access to that folder as well. Fonts. If we were to come here and it's already running, pubget, you can type pubget, but it's done automatically. So now we have access to the fonts called Paddings. Let's try to give one of this. Okay, inside the typography section, since we created it in sections, now it'll be easier to find. So we want to change the font here, so it's inside the typography section, and let's just change one of this. And inside text style, what we can do is font family, font Paddings. If we were to run this, it is going to change. So this is how you, to make it clearer, let's make it bigger. As you can see, there's a difference in the font. It's because we have taken a font from Google Fonts and placed it inside of asset folder, and we specified that we are going to be using something from the assets folder inside the fonts directory, and we have specified the fonts Paddings. The asset for this is inside assets fonts / poppymedium.ttf. So this is how you can use fonts inside your application. Let's create the custom widget that we have created in the Figma design. So as you can see here, it's some sort of a Polaroid looking image type of widget. There's a image, and this is in a stack because there's another container here with a heart-shaped button. Below that, there's text in a column-like structure, and the whole of this is inside a white color container with a padding of 14. So let's try to implement this inside our code. As you can tell by now, we can create another builder function like this, but for widgets like this, which you may use in another section of your app, what you can do is write the code somewhere else such that you can use this same widget all over your application. So let's create a new file called custom view widget.dart, and this is a class called custom view widget extends stateless widget. Let's fix all our overrides and key. So in the home screen, we are using a stateless widget and it's returning a scaffold. And because a screen is essentially a scaffold and this is a separate widget, this is not really a scaffold element. So we won't be using a scaffold. Instead, what we'll be returning is directly the container itself. Container, and the height of the container is 521 and width is 390. So let's specify that. 521, width is 390, and the padding is h-inserts.all 14. And inside the container, there's a column with an image type of widget and text, and another text. So let's do that. Child should be text. Before that, let's give this a color, white, and the child should be a column. And for the children, let's firstly create that image. We do that by calling the image.asset widget asset, and let's just use the previous image. So let's try to run this custom widget into our home screen. We do that by calling the custom widget view widget, and if you were to rerun this, let's see what happens below. Okay, there's a asset not found. Okay, there's something wrong here. Okay, the slash should not be this way, it's the other way around. You have to restart this. As you can see here, the image is here. So why isn't it we can't really tell where is the background of this custom widget. So let's wrap this custom widget with another widget, and let's make it a container, and the color should be the gray color which we have been using all our while. Let's just copy everything. All right, copy this and paste it in here. Let's try to see what happens. Okay, the gray color is here, so let's give it a margin top as well, top of 24. Let's see. Okay, much better. Now let's see why this image is not filling the entire box like we intended in the design file. So to do that, let's just cover this with a container. The color should be amber. As you can see, we have to specify the container's height and width, so it's 362. The height is 362, the width is 362. If you were to run this, it is supposed to, the image is supposed to fill all of this, and right now it's not filling because the actual size of this image is, when we imported it, it is very small. So it is doing what it's supposed to do, but we want it to expand all the way here. So what we can do is go to the image side and fit, and use the box fit.cover to cover the entire area. So if we were to run, it's going to cover everything. So the image part is done for now, and let's create the text below the container. There should be a text, and let's see the details. Okay, for now, copy the placeholder value. Okay, we'll just take this content copy. It's 20 and the height is 1.21 and the weight is 700. Let's try to do that. Placeholder style, text style, height is 1.21, and the font size should be 20, and the weight should be font width dot w 700. Let's try to see what happens. Okay, it's working. There should be some padding here of 12. Okay, let's give this guy a padding of only top. This is 12. And this will also have a padding of 10 in the bottom, so let's give that as well, 10. And let's try to see what happens. Okay, so the column does not, by default it aligns everything in a center, so the cross axis alignment should be as the start as well. So if you were to do this, okay, this is fixed. Let's copy the content of the other text. Okay, for now let's just ignore the color of the text as well, and let's just place the content inside. And the style should be style font size is, the font size is 12 and the weight is 400. Okay, font size is 12 and the weight is 400. So if the weight is 400, by default, if I'm not wrong, it's gonna give all the text a default weight of 400, so we don't need to specify that here. So let's try to see what happens. Okay, it's come here properly, and there's another text with a padding of 18 between these two, so let's try to give that. Cover this text with a padding and only bottom with 18, and create the text here. Let's copy the content first. Copy, it's 12 and 400. The height is 1.2. This, the color is different. Let's try to do that. The style should be similar, so let's copy the style. And what am I missing here? Is the color. So let's copy the color. Now if we were to reload this, this is on the left side, so how we can align this to the right is wrap this with align, and the alignment should be alignment dot center right. So if we were to run this, okay, it works. For now, let's just keep all of these cons so the blue color lines does not annoy us. Const, okay, so it's almost done here, and what we are missing is this heart-shaped button here. So if you look closer, this is inside a stack and the image is on the bottom and this button is on top. So let's try to create this. If we look at the height and width is 46, so this container should have a stack. So let's cover this with a stack. This is children. This can be a size widget, size box widget if it does not have any decoration. So we need another container here with a height 46 and width 46 as well, and the decoration should be box decoration, and the shape should be box shaped of circle, and the color should be white. So let's do that, and if you were to run this, restart, as you can see, it's stacked on top of the image, but it's on the left side. So let's try to align this on the bottom right. So if we were to wrap this with align and wrap it with alignment dot bottom right, so what happens is it's not gonna work because this alignment is only for this height. So to make it clear, what I can do is, let's cover this align with a container, and let's just give it a decoration, box decoration, and a border, and see where this circular container is allowed to move around. If you were to run this, as you can see in the orange line, it shows that this guy can only align in this section covered by the orange color border. So even if I were to do something like center right, it's only going to go on the right side, and if I were to do center, it's going to come to the center. This is because this circular container only understands its existence inside this orange color borders. So even if I were to say align it to the bottom of the image, this circular container can only go up until the orange color border here. So what we can do is we can specify that the space that the circular container can move around is the same as the image behind. So how we can do that? We can copy the height of the image size box and paste it here. So if we were to run this, it's going to come here, because as of now the place where the circular container can move around is shown by the orange color border, which encompasses all of this image. And you can do something like this to have a better understanding. If you were to do 400, for example, as you can see, now the circular container can move up until here. So for now, let's just keep it 362. And we want it to align to the bottom right, so let's go here and align it to bottom right. And as you can see in the design, there's some padding here. So there are many ways to do this. One way is to just make sure the container has a padding of all 14. And if you were to run this, it's going to come up here. So this part is done. Let's remove the decoration. And let's see what we are missing. What we are missing is the heart-shaped image inside the circular container. So let's export this. And let's put that inside the logos folder in the assets folder. So where it is inside the downloads. Copy this and paste it inside logos. Okay, it is in our project now. And just like we did for the other images, we need to specify that we will be using files from the logos directory. So how we do that is we go to the pubspec YAML, and we have to specify that we will be using assets folders logos folder. So it's going to do a pub get, which means it's going to fix all the dependency. And if we come here and inside the container, the circular container, if we were to give it a child, and we pass in an image.asset widget, and let's copy the vector and place it here. This is the wrong slash, and if we were to reload this, the heart shape is going to come up here. So this is how you create your custom widget. And lastly, before we go, what we can do is, the usefulness of this widget is that you can use this widget anywhere else on any other screen in your app. Another useful thing is you can pass in variables like this. And make sure the constructor receives the parameters. And instead of giving a static values like placeholder here, we can pass the title, and this is not a constant anymore. And for the description as well, we can pass in from outside the widget itself. And right now the home screen, it's saying your custom widget requires a description and a title. So for description, let's just say so if you were to run this, these are going to change according to what you provide here. So that is the usefulness of custom widgets. So in the next tutorial, what we'll be going through is stateful widget versus stateless widget. As you've seen here, we were using stateless widget all throughout the videos, and there's another widget called stateful widget, which I'll be explaining in the next video, and also why we use stateless widget and stateful widget. Besides that, we'll also be going through buttons and text input. So until then, see you soon.